You will hear this story for the first time only in this video. Do not forget to write your comments about the story. Have a good listen. The fog rolled in thick and heavy over the small town of Gray Hollow, shrouding the streets and homes in an eerie, muffled silence. No one could remember the last time they'd seen the sun. It was as if the entire town was trapped in a perpetual twilight, the dense fog acting as a suffocating blanket. And then the sickness came. At first, it was dismissed as a simple flu, a seasonal bug. But soon, people began to notice that those infected were not merely sick, they were changing. Their eyes took on a wild, feral gleam, and they grew increasingly violent. Rumors spread quickly, whispers of a virus that drove its victims to madness and bloodlust. For Emily, it started with a desperate phone call from her friend, Sarah. "You have to get out of there," Sarah had pleaded. "It's not safe. They're not themselves anymore." Emily's parents had already succumbed to the virus, their once loving eyes now filled with murderous intent. Emily gathered what supplies she could and set out to find her friends, hoping they were still sane. She found Sarah, along with Jack and Lucas, holed up in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. They shared terrified glances, knowing they were among the few still untouched by the madness. "We need to get out of Gray Hollow," Jack insisted. "There's nothing left for us here. We need to find somewhere safe." But leaving the town was no simple feat. The roads were teeming with the infected, their twisted bodies lurking in the shadows, waiting for fresh victims. The group decided to move under the cover of darkness, navigating through the back alleys and hidden paths of the town. They could hear the distant screams and the guttural growls of the infected, a constant reminder of the danger that stalked them. They reached a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town, its windows boarded up and door barely hanging on its hinges. "We can stay here for the night," Lucas suggested. "It's better than being out in the open." The others nodded, too exhausted and terrified to argue. Inside, the house was a maze of dust and decay. They barricaded the door and settled in, taking turns to keep watch. The night was filled with haunting sounds, the scratching at the walls, the moaning wind, and the occasional distant howl of the infected. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind made her jump. She tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself that they were safe, at least for now. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the cracks in the boarded windows, Emily noticed something strange. Dark stains on the floor, leading towards the basement. She followed the trail, her heart pounding, until she stood before the basement door. "What is it?" Jack asked, noticing her hesitation. "There's something down there," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "Something wrong." Jack grabbed a flashlight, and together they descended into the darkness. The basement was damp and cold, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. At first, it seemed empty, but then the light from Jack's flashlight revealed a horrific sight. Piles of bodies, their eyes wide open in death, their mouths frozen in silent screams. "Oh my God!" Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. "We need to get out of here." But as they turned to leave, they heard a low, guttural growl. One of the bodies began to move, slowly rising to its feet, its eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. "Run!" Lucas shouted, pushing the others towards the stairs. They scrambled up, slamming the door behind them. But the infected were relentless, banging on the door with inhuman strength. The barricades wouldn't hold for long. "We need to find another way out," Emily said, her voice shaking. They frantically searched the house, but every exit seemed blocked or guarded by the infected. Panic set in as the door began to splinter under the relentless assault. "The attic," Jack suggested. "We can climb out onto the roof and make a run for it." With no better options, they hurried up the narrow staircase, the sounds of the infected growing louder and more frenzied behind them. The attic was a cramped, dusty space filled with old furniture and forgotten memories. They pried open a small window and climbed out onto the roof, the cold morning air hitting them like a slap. Below, the infected roamed the streets, their numbers growing with each passing hour. "We can't stay up here," Lucas said. "They'll find a way to get to us." Emily scanned the horizon, her eyes landing on an old church at the edge of town. "There," she pointed. "We can make it to the church. Maybe we can find sanctuary there." One by one, they climbed down from the roof, careful to avoid attracting attention. They moved quickly and quietly, darting from shadow to shadow, their hearts racing with fear. The church loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the gray sky. As they reached the church, they found the doors locked and barred from the inside. "Hello?" Jack called out, banging on the heavy wooden door. "Please, let us in." For a moment, there was silence, and then the sound of footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly priest, his eyes weary but sane. "Come in, quickly," he urged. They slipped inside, the door closing behind them with a heavy thud. The interior of the church was dimly lit by flickering candles, casting long shadows on the walls. "You're safe here for now," the priest said, his voice echoing in the vast, empty space. "But we must remain vigilant. The infected are drawn to noise and movement. They will come for us if we're not careful." The group settled in, grateful for the brief respite, but their relief was short-lived. That night, as they tried to rest, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. The infected had found them, their frenzied howls filling the night. "We have to fight," Lucas said, grabbing a heavy candlestick as a makeshift weapon. The others followed suit, arming themselves with whatever they could find. The battle was fierce and desperate, the infected overwhelming in their sheer numbers and ferocity. As dawn broke, the church was stained with blood, both human and infected. Emily stood amidst the carnage, her body trembling with exhaustion and grief. They had survived the night, but at a terrible cost. The virus had taken almost everything from them. Grey Hollow was no longer a town, but a graveyard of lost souls, and the fog that had once concealed it now seemed to be the town's final shroud. To hear more suspenseful and chilling stories like this one, please consider supporting my channel by subscribing and liking the video. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you!